What it do, what it does, where you been, where you was, but it ain't what it is. Facing the mud, I really be hating in the mud, said I can't pick it up, but I did. Y'all know goon put too much space in the
2020 isn't over yet, and it's already been a pretty wild year, with people saying goodbye to loved ones way too early and also living in a global pandemic and in a lockdown that doesn't seem to end. My name is Swarzy. I'll be your hostess for the mostess for this conversation called Loss in 2020. And as you can see, I'm joined with some pretty incredible people, and we're going to be walking through loss, but also I want to take this conversation on a journey to understand what we may have gained in this year as well. My first question of the roundtable conversation is, what have you lost in 2020? And I'm kicking it off with Josh.
So I think, like, ultimately for me, I mean, I know a lot of people have lost, relatives and friends and stuff like that. For me, it's been a sense of identity that came with the direction that my life was heading in.
Okay.
I think that, in sort of the old normal, there was always a sense of freedom to be able to sort of pick the destination of my life or the path that which I want to follow. And I feel like with the pandemic, it put a halt on everything, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of had to regroup and refine where my direction was going to go and what life was going to look like for me going forward.
Yeah.
So it's taken away kind of any sense of being able to plan life.
I think currently now there's this perception that when you mention that you have lost someone, it doesn't have to be COVID related.
Yeah.
The instant was it because of COVID?
Mm-hmm.
I sadly lost my uncle about a month ago. He had been ill for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. But I remember sort of bumping into a school friend and sort of announcing that, and her genuine initial response, not out of ignorance, but because of what we're literally going through, she was like, was it because of COVID? And so for me, loss during a pandemic is looking at the language that we use and the association. So right now we're going through something that is very traumatic. It's very confusing. It's very unprecedented. There's no sort of conclusion at the moment. So when you say I've lost someone, why are we saying, was it because of COVID? To a certain extent, yes. People have lost work. People have lost businesses. Friends, families, loved ones. But it's that sense of, was it because of COVID? No, it doesn't have to be just about COVID. There are many other things going on.
That people have lost people too.
Yeah.
I think differentiating as well between sort of like a COVID area of life and also just life in itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Life is still running underneath COVID. So
Yeah.
to go back to your point about planning and having the freedom to be able to plan, I was traveling abroad and I'd been saving for a really long time to go on this long trip, and I was in a relationship and I knew what 2020 was going to be. So Southeast Asia, moved to New Zealand. Wow. Suddenly my relationship broke down, travelled by myself. I had a visa in New Zealand, everything was set. And then I get stuck in Cambodia, I can't get home. When I do get home, lockdown, I've lost all my money on flights, I've got no job, travelling's not happening anymore. And it was like, I don't have the freedom to live the life that I had planned for such a long time, and that just isn't available to me anymore. So who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? Now I don't have the freedom to just jump on a plane like I have for the last 4 years. What do I do now? And I don't have any money, and we're in a pandemic and I can't leave the house. And I had to really come back to like, who am I? What am I doing? It's sink or swim. How am I going to use this time for my life? Like, am I just going to be bored at home like everybody else? Or am I just going to get up, carry on, and make the most of the opportunity in the situation that I have?
Amazing. Has it also been a sink or swim moment for you?
I think it's really important what Jade said. I've lost someone who was family to me. It was really difficult because I've lost someone that was family to me before. And it's hard for me because I'm very private and I don't talk about things like this. I think with this in particular, it was very public because of what he did. He was a professional athlete, so a lot of people knew him. So is that rush where people all went to social media and like posted it, like just posting his face before we had even come to terms with it as family. And I think although everyone wants to show how much they sort of care, I think it's really important for people to take the family into consideration. just be careful about how, this is before anybody from the family had even posted, there was just, his face was just everywhere. And that was very hard because it's during COVID, so everyone is on their phones constantly at this point. I had my phone going off on the actual day from all these numbers that I've never seen in my life, that people feeling that they could call me. Then there's restrictions on who can come and who can't come. How do you tell people they can't come to a funeral? How do you tell people they can't come to the burial grounds? Which is very different for me because of how private I am. So that level of comfortability that people have, I think it needs to sort of go, or
it's
people,
still sensitive,
very sensitive. So I just thought it was very bizarre how people felt so comfortable to then they'll say their condolences and say, oh, and what happened, by the way? I thought, to me, that's quite crazy. Like, I would never ask, but maybe because I've dealt with loss before,
have a different experience.
Exactly. But I would just never ask. I just think it's nobody's business. If you don't already know, then maybe that should tell you that's not your place, or it's not your
Pre-pandemic,
business.
I wouldn't ask. I mean, even now, like, it would never cross my mind to ask somebody.
Yeah.
So, what was the manner of death?
Yeah.
That to me I'm really uncomfortable with that.
It's quite a personal question, isn't it? And even
really
to jump
personal.
over from like being online and being very accessible, I suppose for you, Osh, you're a musician, you're an artist, so you are online.
Yeah.
But in this 2020 and this season, I'd love to know, for your question and your answer, what have you lost in 2020, and has being online affected you in that way as well?
For me, so I lost my dad in April. And so the two things for me I've lost is probably, my dad and just my genuine smile. And in regards to my dad, you're private, like I'm private as well, but I put it on my platform. Because obviously at the time I know a lot of people see what I do or whatever. And at the time it was, no one leave your house, and people were leaving your house. And my dad was older with underlying health issues. This is what they were preaching at the time, innit? So yeah, and then I feel like now dealing with it is because the problem that I'm going through now is I don't necessarily believe in it anymore, because
Don't believe in what, sorry?
in like not believe in COVID, but just some of the things they say don't really add up. In regards to, for me and my house, my mum's also older and suffers from Parkinson's. So she was in bed with my dad, and based on what they were saying at the time was you can't be around people with the virus or whatever, and it didn't make any sense to me that I've never had a symptom, but I understood because for me I'm young and it could have been what's the word?
Asymptomatic.
Yeah, that word. And then but it didn't make sense for my mum. I never saw a symptom on her, so I'm kind of in a bubble of like right now I just don't have the energy to go back on well I guess I'm still grieving, but I don't have the energy to be like this doesn't add up, or this doesn't add up, or he was at the hospital, but I've seen people his age who just stayed at home, recover, did the hospital neglect, and those type of things. So just a lot of confusion in regards to that. And then, just my smile in regards to grief. I envision grief being, I turn off the lights in my room, I wear black 24/7, no one chat to me, I turn off my phone. And then obviously it happens. Like I've seen grief, I've gone through it, but in regards to like my dad, for example, really close to home, I was like, I'll go a day, if I'm honest, I'll go a day and I won't think of him for like a whole day. And at 11:59 at night, you'll be laying in your bed and it's over. Do you get it? So just learning how to adapt to just finding my feet, because I'm used to being a confident, speech marks, borderline, arrogant, joking. But just confident, outgoing person. And just learning the balance of having my genuine smile, because I can be out and about and smile and talk to people, but when I'm at home by myself, it's a completely different story. You get it? So yeah.
I think that's like mental health in general, and also grief. I've suffered a lot of bereavement in my time, like more than most people before my age. And I really learned how to sort of like quite quickly process, because it was pre-pandemic. So I just sort of was like, right, okay, this is happening. You become like autopilot. And then all of a sudden you do something like accidentally burn yourself on a coffee, or you stub your toe, and then it's just like, it's all there, it's in front of you. And I think one of the things, so I'm a mental health advocate, and I talk about like these micro conversations that we need to be having. And I think maybe this is what the pandemic has taught us in terms of so many people going through bereavements now, having micro conversations, or just acknowledging in these like micro moments of just like, I'm struggling with this, or this is happening, or this has come up.
It's reminding us to talk.
Yeah, I think everyone has like this big coming out story. I've lost this person, or I've had this mental health issue, or this has happened in my life. But what about these moments when maybe you're out and about and you're just struggling, these micro moments where you can go, I just need a minute, or
I think
I'm
that's
actually
my
just
struggle,
struggling
is
with
to
this.
be able to say I need a minute. I'm just so used to, before everything, I'm just used to having life patterned. Like, I honestly could say, I'll banter with my friends, it's like, where there's an ocean, there's a way. Like, I would always just say that, yeah? And then, bam, for the first time, I don't have an answer. For the first time, it's out of my control. And it was just a weird adjustment.
You know, you said that you lost your confidence. I think confidence perhaps could be redefined for you now, because as you sat there and sort of expressed in a vulnerable way everything you've lost, that to me like exudes confidence. Yeah. Confidence just looks different now. I lost my dad when I was 9 years old, and I'm 33 now, and I'm not over it, and I never expect to be over it. And grief is not a destination, but it's like a path that I'm on. And time's not a healer either, by the way. Time gives me the opportunity to do some healing, but it's not a healer. And I think ultimately sadness that comes with grief, right, is exactly how you should feel.
Yeah.
You should be allowed to feel sad. And like, there's loads of moments within my life where I still feel sad about my dad. The problem is that as a society, we create hurdles that we think we should have got over. I'm 33 now, I should be over losing my dad when I'm 9 years old. But that's not true. I've got my own kids, and there's certain moments that bring things back. And then I think, I haven't thought about it for 2 or 3 days. And then I feel guilty that I haven't thought about it for 2 or 3 days. And it's the shame and the conversation that I have over my head. When we can kind of reconnect with exactly how we're feeling, for me, confidence, courage, is being able to communicate that true feeling. And I think this idea that we put a pressure on ourselves to show up and be something for the people around us is a pressure that we shouldn't put on ourselves.
Yeah.
Authenticity, people talk about being your true self a lot, and it kind of gets overdone. And we think that authenticity is like finding, who am I, what does that mean? Authenticity at its core is just understanding what I'm feeling, knowing what I need as a result, and then at least being able to communicate that within my relationships and my activities. And so if I have the ability to say, you know what, I don't know what I feel right now, then that is me being my true authentic self.
Yeah.
Rather than believing I'm in this certain situation and I feel that I should be able to show up, then you get into, society things and what they think we should be. As a man, I grew up believing that I shouldn't struggle, that I shouldn't cry, that I should be the sort of happy-go-lucky person, and it's something that I've had to undo that conditioning as a way to be able to sort of manage and deal with that.
I think everybody as well went through that whole thing of losing this face. I feel like now the pandemic has I think it's humanised everybody a bit.
And stripped it all back to be like,
I
well,
think it's
we're all in the same boat.
I think it's allowed us to actually go, you know what, I need to be vulnerable right now.
Our generation seems to be quite vulnerable, if I'm honest. No, my parents and their parents, they probably wouldn't have shared, definitely not in this style anyway, maybe around the dinner table when you're having Sunday roast. But in this, to invite my mum and be like, yeah, mum, what do you think about such and such? Probably wouldn't have been such a thing. But for our generation, there does seem to be a strength in being vulnerable. But I just want to know what you may have lost in a good way to sit here today and to say, I haven't spoken about loss like this.
Do you know what it was? I think as well, being a black woman, a black person, most of us don't like to be vulnerable. We've always got walls up because we're constantly fighting for something, fighting against something. For me to get here, I've had, like I said, I've lost 2 people in my life that are family, so very close, the same way quite a few of us here have. The first time it happened, I was completely mute. It wasn't normal the way I reacted. I went on as normal. My friends didn't know, some of them for years. And for the loss that I had, that's not normal for them to not know that. I didn't speak about it. I didn't tell my school about it. And I think that's where me keeping things to myself, like that just kept building and building and building. This time around, I felt like I was forced to talk about it because it was so public. And when it happened, immediately I noticed on my social media accounts, views went up because people were trying to look for answers through my social media account, and I've never been someone that posts everything publicly anyway, but I guess people just wanted to know, well, is it true? Because that was the question that was sort of going around, and then how did it happen? And like everyone from Ends knew how close we were, and I wasn't gonna say anything until I thought people are still calling me, people are still messaging me, people feel like they're getting access to me through different ways, and I don't even know how. So I thought, I'm going to put a stop to it, as in like people contacting me by just saying what I have to say. So I just did an Instagram post. I just took that, screenshotted it, put it on Twitter as well, just to sort of help that die down. And I know people messaged me saying that they were shocked that I said anything, just because that's not, exactly. And what it has done is made me have to speak about it more.
So for you, in a way, sorry to interrupt, it was almost like a catch-22 situation, because it felt like people were coming into your direction for not saying anything, and then when you did say something, people were still saying, well, I wouldn't have expected that from you. So it does feel like you was in a catch-22.
It was so overwhelming. I don't think people realise how overwhelming it was for me. Till this day, people that know me don't know about the first loss I had. So people watching this will just be like, bruh, I didn't even know she lost someone beforehand.
One of the things, because I'm very like, I used to be anyway, like, I don't have time to waste. I need to just go. Some of my friends would say I'm quite emotionless. Obviously, what happened to my dad, not forced, but emotion was naturally brought out of me. So, one of those things was like to take a step back and understand, now that I've dealt with grief, it's like when people tell you these stories, your response can't be chin up. Sometimes you got to be like, all right, take it in, deep it, and then deal with it how you need to deal with it. One of the other things I took from it was, what was my purpose? So like my dad passed away, and he walked out the house, and in 3 days he was gone. And I was like, okay, if that was a year's time and I was on my deathbed, God forbid, touch wood, would I be able to look back and say, I'm happy with what I've done? So like some of my teams here right now, when I do my music, I used to think it's a thing of, let me go to the studio, I do my bit, which is sing, record, and then you guys do the marketing, you guys think of the video. And then after what happened, I was like, you know what? Can I look back and say, I did this how I wanted to do it, kind of thing. So it gave me the purpose of like, I need to know what I'm here for on this planet to do, and how am I going to execute it. So I started to like look into things way more than I used to, like take thought, take pride in everything I was doing. And it's something I got from my dad also, because he was known for like being the one that brings everyone together, getting things done. So yeah, after all of that, I just learned like purpose. What is the purpose? Everyone has a purpose, and you need to follow your purpose, your destiny.
And when you say like chin up, where did that come from?
I don't like emotion. I'm emotionless, was emotionless. Like I don't have time. I never had time to like, I just go. Like,
But surely you get upset by watching films.
No. Well,
you're in music. Music makes you feel.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like now, I feel like you have to deal with things. Like, for example, my dad was very much in my life. Mum and dad together, been together forever. I kind of strayed away in my school years, and I don't think he was too happy with it, so we distanced. So when my dad dies in the space of 3 days, it was a thing of, I've got so much to say to you that I didn't get to say. Like when he walked out, my dad was in and out of hospital a lot, so I'm always used to him coming back. So like, he walked out, and now, upon reflection, I wish I could have said, I love you. Or, do you know what I mean? Or now I'm doing things in music that are good. I wish, for example, my video came out the other day, and one of the things I would do, I would always show it to my mum and dad the day before it comes out. For the first time, I showed it just to my mum. And things like that the things I used to take for granted. It's just, do you get it?
If you don't mind me asking, do you think your sort of go mentality is a coping mechanism, even before your dad's passing? Do you think that's a coping mechanism to life, as in, if I don't have time to stop and deal with the emotions, I don't have to deal with them?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good one though now, because I think that's probably why it's hit me 10 times harder, because I was so just go. Now that happened with my dad, I didn't know how to go.
Like what you've just done there and what you've done previously when you spoke about it, like there's so much courage in that, by the way. Like I grew up, when my dad died, right, I grew up with an idea of what a man was, right? And I didn't think a man did what you just did, right? And listen, in my early, I'm 33 now, in my early 20s, if I'd have seen you speak like that, it would change my life. It changed my life. For you to say, I never got to say I love you, I don't even think I've uttered those kind of words. Do you know what I mean? I have more so in my life today, right? The life that I live today. But having the courage, look, vulnerability is courage, right? We kind of separate like empowerment and vulnerability and say like, can we do one or the other? Vulnerability is empowerment, right? And for you to be able to, look, you say that you don't do emotions, right? And then to go and speak like that, right? Like you've just done.
I thought I didn't do emotion. That's what I was. Yeah.
You probably release them in a different way, right? If you do music, right, you're creative. I'd imagine it comes out in that way, right? But the way that you used to do it would have served the purpose in that moment, right? And I think some of the biggest things that I do with my dad, right, is I used to think that I needed to change the difficult emotions to something more special. So I would say, if I feel sad about losing my dad, let's try and find the positive and say it's going to make me the man that I am today or something like that, right? I don't do that so much anymore. What I prefer to do is I say, you know what, I am really sad about losing my dad. And that shows up in my life a lot in different ways. Like I say, I've got my own children. I watch my son, my 9-year-old son does boxing now, and I watch him do that. And I think, my dad never watched me do stuff like that. And it still comes, but rather than trying to change that sadness, I allow myself that sadness, and then I take the power in that sadness, and I say, what can I do in the world today? And I think our value and our purpose is innate in that. Your value that you speak about, your purpose has always been there, right? I guess the game of life sometimes is about how we uncover that. And I just think that we should take a second to really just pause on what you've shared and the way that you've shared it. Listen, the ripples as well, by the way, when people see this, the ripples, you empower one person, empowers another person, right? The ripples are huge, and I do think it's a big thing that is important to just pause on, in that way.
This time has given us the ability to just stop and really have to face the things that you need to face.
What we're also seeing as well with grief is the child now becomes the parent in terms of, you losing your dad, family members, and so on. So when I told my mum, because my uncle moved to America, so my mum and her brother, my uncle, they didn't see each other for 20, 30 years. And when I got the call from my cousin to say, he's passed away, you're going to have to tell your mum. I've never seen my mum in such a vulnerable position before. She was doing such a mundane task. She was doing the ironing. And I just remember her pushing the... Oh, I'm getting upset, sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry. I remember seeing her push the ironing board away. And I had to go, Mum, your brother's died. And not only is she having to accept that she hasn't seen her sibling for 20, 30 years, she now has to accept that she also has to say goodbye to him as well. And during the current situation, my son and I had to stay with my mum. So my son's in the living room. He doesn't have a clue. And then I have to tell him. And I have to say, your granduncle sadly passed away. So grief in itself, though it is vulnerable, it matures you in the most grounded way possible. Whether you want to accept it now, or in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years' time, it will ground you and it will mature you.
Yeah, man. When the mortgage, you have to start doing the mortgage. It's jarring.
Yeah. little things like that. Oh, I'm going to have to start paying the bills. I'm going to have to start...
No more clubbing.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take the humour in that now. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to do adult things now. But that's such the remarkable thing, and the beauty of grief is that it isn't always dark and morbid.
Yeah, I think
I think it brings out appreciation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You've had to be a parent to both your son and your mum in that situation. Like, you've had to take that role of authority, because unfortunately in these situations somebody has to. Yeah. And somebody does, they just step up and go, you've got to take control of the situation because there's mortgages to pay, paperwork to fill out.
Oh, you appreciate things. It just makes you see life a lot differently. Like, what's that saying? Twice, for everyone anyway, you're twice a child, once an adult, I think. That was what my mum used to say. But anyway, so now, in my house, it was my mum before that was the one that needed to be looked after the most. My dad passes, and now it's just me looking after her. But now it's I take, like, I never used to be in the house as much, but now I'm all, because I'm having to be in it. It's just little things I appreciate, like just there, just my mum being there. Like, I'll wake up and I'll see my dad. Like, my dad's, he had his chair, and I just look at him and I can see him. Obviously he's not there. I can see him, but I know he's not there. Yeah, and I'm like, now I have to, like, now I feel like I am a husband. Obviously I'm not a husband to my mum, but I'm a husband, a son, a carer.
You're everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. You get it? So yeah, just appreciation of life, which also takes us to, like, showing appreciation of my friends, just appreciation of my time, appreciation of my health. Little things like I bang out the gym every day, so I can't even walk. I ain't got a back crack now. Yeah, so yeah,
for me, it's really taught me that, like, life is so short, and I think I've experienced grief in both gone in an instant and then terminally ill. And I think for me, I've lived a very colourful life up till now because of the fact that I've lost so many people, and I know it can be over in a minute. So I just think, like, for me, it's taught me that kindness is key. Like, you never know what someone's going through. You never know if it's going to be your last day. And you just think, if I say, wake up tomorrow and I'm not here and I'm wherever, am I going to be pleased and grateful that I lived my last day like that? Like, when I really get, like, stuck in my mental health issues, or I get really, like, not well, I just think, like, come on, Jasmine, like, life is so short. Are you being the best version of yourself? Because it could be over tomorrow. Are you being kind to the people around you? Are you living life to the fullest? And I know that is so trite. It is so shit to say when people go, live life to your fullest. But it's true. Like, life could be over any second.
If it helps you get through it, then you live by those sort of stereotype statements.
Why not? Like, I'm never afraid to do anything now, because I just think, why not? Yeah. I could do it, make the decision, and then something could happen to me and I'm gone. But at least I know I've done it. Like, I've lived it. And I think that, I feel like that comes from the fact that it's, like, because I've lost so many people.
Yeah. What you're talking about really is shaping your legacy. How is grief and the positive and the negatives and the learnt lessons, how does that shape the way that you live to then continue the legacy from your dad or those that you've lost? And I hear abundance when you talk about, like, living life to the full. How do you live abundantly? And it goes back to my friend's dad. He lived a life that was not empty of suffering, but very abundant. He made sure to be present in the moment. And for me, following Jesus, when he talks about, I've come to give you life and life to the fullest, or he says, don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow has its own worries, I would hope and pray that my legacy is that I'm so present with the moment that whoever I'm talking to, I'm listening. So on that last question, on how does grief shape your legacy, I would love to know, and go around the table, what is your legacy? What is the things that have come out of grief to then shape that experience? And whose legacy may you be continuing on in your own life?
So look, my dad was an alcoholic. My dad comes from a long line of alcoholics, a long line of sort of untreated trauma. And my kids don't really know who my dad was. There's no pictures of him up here. There's not many good memories of my dad. I don't want my legacy to be huge. I want my legacy to be that my grandkids will see a picture of me on the wall, and that, you know, my kids will be able to say that was my dad and he's a good man. It chokes me up because I can't do that with my dad. And I think, you know, to break that cycle, and to understand that cycle can be broken, that's what my legacy will be. You know, I saw look, when I was 9 years old, I saw my dad take his own life. I was there when he did it. And at the age of 24, I decided to take my own life. And my dad's legacy, you know, my legacy would have been another kink in the chain, right? But fortunately for me, I had an experience with my children that changed everything. I went to see them because I knew I was going to die. The past became irrelevant. The future was non-existent. And for the first time ever in my life, I felt present with my children in a way that I'd never experienced before. And listen, what that taught me is that, you can talk about God, right? The only place where that happens is right here, right now. And in breaking that cycle, the ripple effects, you know, are potentially huge.
Like, it got to a point where you wanted to take your own life. Do you know what I mean? Like, and people are in that moment. That can be a very real moment for people. So to even think like you would want to change that, like, praise God for your life. Praise God for your story, because whoever's going to come and watch this, I don't know who's even going to come past, but to think like someone could say, I'm in your spot, bro. And there would be a moment to them think, oh, I might have a moment like that, and it changes everything around, where one legacy was about to be shut and now a whole new one is about to come from that.
You can break someone else's trauma, someone else's train now. Like,
and it's based on the same thing. It's based on the same thing, yeah? The very same thing. I saw my dad. When I saw him, it was the thing that drove me to the point of suicide, and it's the very same thing that drives me to be successful in my life today.
Yeah.
The only difference is the way that I look at it. That doesn't mean that it makes me feel any different. That doesn't mean it's any less sad, right? But what it means is I'm aware of what it can mean, right? And so, you know, life can flip on its head in a second, right? And so I'm aware of that. And, you know, my daily mission will always be to be present. To be present, because I missed a lot of my life and my kids' life, worrying about the things that had happened and being frightened of the future.
Legacy is my son, undoubtedly. He changed my life 5.5 years ago. He doesn't understand the impacts he has had on my life when it hasn't even been easy with him sometimes. Because even at 5 years old, we're clashing. We used to clash quite a lot because he's quite strong-headed. Don't know who he's learned that from. So there were times where our anger would overshadow the sort of mother-son role.
Right.
And so at times I felt guilty for shouting at him. At times I just felt I just wasn't doing a good job. But what lockdown did, because I actually co-parent my son with his dad, so we established a sort of working family-ship, as it were. And so during lockdown, my son was spending time with me, as I've said sort of earlier in the talk. And that has actually been the closest we have ever been. Wow. And working as a poet and a writer, I do understand that in the last 5 years of being a mum and being a writer for just over 10 years, my writing has shaped more and changed more because of him. So when people say, what's the legacy you want to leave? I'm already leaving a legacy, my son.
Yeah. And just to tease you, what's changed? What change did he inject into you that's now spurred that on?
I said to him today, you know, Mummy's doing some filming today, so when this comes out, he's going to watch this. And I hope he goes, that's my mum. That's my mum. And that is enough for me. So, yeah, that's my legacy. It's all for you. It's all for you, boy.
He's going to be gassed when he's watching this.
Mum, that's me.
For me, legacy is just to be the best. When I say that, I look on my dad's legacy, and all it is, for example, that from Brixton, he grew up in Brixton, they want to name a street after him. So for me, that just shows like, yeah, there's always been something about you. You stand out or whatever. You don't have like for example, you're not in the industry or out there, but people want to name a street of you, and to the average person, someone might think you're just a regular person on the whatever, but they want to recognize you. So you clearly had impact on people's lives. So my aim with my platform, I'm blessed to have a platform with music or whatever, being in the industry or whatever, is to have an impact. He does it with a smile. He does it, just things I used to see in my old man. And at the same time, he wasn't perfect. So look at his flaws and look at his pros and just be as good as he was.
what you just said is do it with a smile. And at the beginning of the conversation, you said you lost your smile.
Yeah.
So even seeing that come 360.
She got me.
You got me now. You got me now. You got me now. Oh, you figured me out.
It makes the cut.
This is like group therapy.
Yeah. But that is beautiful. And even if that is something that I take away, it's like in the moment of grief.
It's what I said, there's always beauty.
Exactly.
There is always beauty in grief.
Hannah.
So I think actually mine's a little bit similar to Osh's about sort of being the best. And just because I think I've matured beyond my years because of the loss that I've had. Very quickly, everything I have to this day, I've worked so hard for to get by myself. So I'm constantly trying to be the best. But I also want to be the best for the people around me, the closest people around me. And for, if I was to leave, for them to say she was there for me. So I don't want to get so swept up in my head, constantly trying to be the best. I do want to stay aware. Every birthday I'm trying to go to. I know that it sounds silly, but like every birthday that a friend, a family has, I'm trying to make, just so that I don't regret anything, and they just feel like I am there for them. I just want to be there for the people that I can. Like the people around us, we know when their birthdays are coming. Do you know what I mean? So why is there always for the people that are closest to us, why do we make excuses sometimes? We know it's coming this day every year, every single year, even when you don't have that much money. A thing within my family, I've said to them just recently, even if at one point you don't have that much money, you know when mum's birthday is coming next year. Why aren't you saving from now? £10 every month to just make each other feel special. You know, just little things like that we can try to do for each other. Why not do it?
And it's mad how we celebrate life most at a funeral rather than on a birthday, right?
But that's why I'm asking, why does it have to take the death of a person for us to really celebrate their being? Like, why?
It shouldn't, but because life goes on, like, as much as it hurts us that we've lost someone, we still are here on this earth and we still have a life to live. And God has given us life for another day, do you know what I mean, to go on. And it's not that we're forgetting it because they'll forever be in our hearts, but we're human. So we are going to take things for granted once again. Like we're saying it now, but we're going to go back home. We're all going to take one thing for granted. We're not perfect. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just the way life does go. We just need to try and appreciate people as much as we can and sometimes try to remind ourselves, but that is life.
So much has come out of this conversation that we need to do part 2. Agreed?
Yes.
Part 2 is going to come your way real soon. This has been a fascinating conversation. If you've been watching online or watching at home, get involved on the socials. We would love to know some of the points that if you've been going through grief, what has been shaping your grief and what's also been shaping your legacy as well. I've been Swarzy. This has been the Roundtable Conversation. We hope to see you very soon. Take care.